Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder how police officers deal with seeing so much suffering and how it affects them? Well, this new study dives deep into that, exploring the complex emotional world of law enforcement. Imagine being a police officer. Your job constantly puts you face to face with people in their worst moments. They see tragedy, grief, and trauma. This is part of what is called emotional labor, and it can be incredibly tough. But how does it actually impact an officer's mind and well-being over time? This is the big question researchers Andrea Fischbach and Nicolai Kleineidam set out to answer. They propose that when officers encounter suffering, two different emotional responses can kick in. One is empathy, which is like feeling with the person suffering, almost taking on their pain yourself. The other is compassion, which is more like feeling for the person and having a desire to help them. The researchers had a fascinating idea. They thought that empathy, that feeling with, might actually lead to emotional exhaustion. Think about it. If you are constantly absorbing everyone else's pain, you are going to get emotionally drained. On the other hand, they believed compassion, that desire to help, might actually lead to more work engagement, making officers feel more fulfilled and connected to their job. They also considered a skill called emotional distancing, which is like creating a healthy boundary to protect your own emotions when dealing with others' distress. They suspected this distancing could act as a sort of emotional shield. So, how did they test this out? They conducted a study with over 600 German police officers. They surveyed them twice with a 1-month gap in between. This is a really important scientific trick called a longitudinal study. It means they could look at how things changed over time, which helps us get closer to understanding cause and effect. They asked officers about how much suffering they were exposed to, how much they felt empathy, how much compassion they felt, how much they used emotional distancing, how emotionally exhausted they felt, and how engaged they were with their work. Now, let's get to the really juicy part, the results. Did their ideas pan out? In a big way? Yes. They found that when officers were exposed to suffering, they indeed experienced both empathy and compassion. This confirms that these are two distinct reactions to difficult situations. And here is where it gets interesting for emotional exhaustion. The study clearly showed that empathy for suffering, that feeling with others, predicted higher levels of emotional exhaustion a month later. So yes, feeling too much of the victim's pain really does drain officers' emotional resources. This supports the idea that empathy for suffering can be a significant job stressor. But what about compassion? This is where things took an unexpected turn. Contrary to their hypothesis, compassion didn't show a significant long-term effect on work engagement. This means that while officers might feel compassionate, it didn't necessarily lead to them feeling more engaged with their work a month later. This is a really important nuance. It suggests that simply feeling compassionate isn't enough to boost job satisfaction or engagement in this demanding profession. Now, remember that emotional distancing we talked about? This is where it really shone. The researchers found that emotional distancing acted as a protective factor. It helped to lessen the immediate impact of suffering on empathy, and critically, it buffered the pathway from empathy to emotional exhaustion. In simpler terms, when officers could maintain healthy emotional boundaries, they were less likely to get overwhelmed by feeling too much of others' pain, and therefore less likely to become emotionally exhausted. This suggests emotional distancing is a really valuable skill, a kind of personal resource that helps prevent burnout. So, what does all of this mean for us and for the incredible men and women in policing? The study really highlights that not all emotional responses to suffering are created equal. Empathy, while a natural and often positive human trait, can be a double-edged sword in high-stress professions, leading to burnout. Compassion, while seemingly positive, didn't show the expected benefits for engagement in this context, which is a key finding to consider. The super important takeaway is about emotional distancing. It is not about being cold or unfeeling. It is about emotional regulation, about being able to care for others without losing yourself in their pain. This is a practical skill that can be trained and developed. It suggests that training programs for police officers should focus on building this emotional resilience, helping them to navigate the emotional demands of their jobs without sacrificing their own well-being. Now, no study is perfect. The researchers themselves pointed out a few limitations. For one, they only had 2 data points, 2 surveys. Ideally, more waves would give an even clearer picture of how things change moment by moment for an individual. Also, some officers dropped out of the study, which is common in long-term research and can sometimes skew the result. although they used advanced statistical methods to try and correct for this. And of course, this study was in Germany, so we need to be careful about applying these findings directly to police officers in other countries without further research. But despite these limitations, the study offers incredibly valuable insights. It provides clear evidence that empathy for suffering can be a direct pathway to emotional exhaustion for police officers. It also strongly supports emotional distancing as a crucial tool for self-protection and prolonged well-being in demanding professions. The fact that compassion didn't lead to increased work engagement in this specific study is also a significant finding, prompting us to rethink how we understand the benefits of compassion in these high-stakes environments. Going forward, it would be fascinating to see if training that specifically focuses on developing emotional distancing skills could be implemented and studied. Also, exploring why compassion didn't boost engagement in this context is a rich area for future research. Perhaps it is about the specific nature of police work, the opportunities for follow-up with victims, or something else entirely. So what is the big? So what here? It is a call to action for better support systems for law enforcement. It means recognizing that dealing with suffering takes a toll, and that skills like emotional distancing are not about detachment but about sustainable caring. This research helps us understand the complex emotional landscape these officers navigate and highlights pathways to foster their well-being, not just for their sake, but for the sake of the communities they serve. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more explorations into the fascinating world of psychology. Let me know in the comments what you think about these findings, and if you have any questions about the research. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.